Hi, I'm Paul Arthur. This is Forum Daily West. Here are some of the top stories we've been following. Prime Minister Mark Carney makes a phone call to U.S. President Donald Trump to set up a meeting within the next week. Green Party co-leader Jonathan Pedno resigns after a disappointing Green Party finish with only one seat and a fifth-place showing in his electoral riding. The Alberta government pledges to put more money into programs that will help build Alberta's workforce, expanding employment support to help employers hire and train workers. Thanks for joining us. President Donald Trump says he'll be meeting with Mark Carney at the White House within the next week after receiving a call from the Prime Minister. After months of taunting, saying Canada could be the 51st state, Trump says he expects to have a, quote, great relationship with Canada.
Called me up yesterday. He said, "Let's make a deal." You know, he was running for office. They both hated Trump, and it was the one that hated Trump, I think, the least that won. I actually think the conservative hated me much more than the so-called liberal. He's a pretty liberal guy. But no, I spoke to him yesterday. Couldn't have been nicer, and I congratulated him. You know, it was a very mixed signal because it's almost even, which makes it very complicated for the country. It's a pretty tight race, but he's a very nice gentleman, and he's going to come to the White House very shortly, within the next week or less.
Carney has vowed to stand firm against Trump, who has levied tariffs against Canada and made threats targeting our sovereignty. During the election campaign, Carney repeatedly warned that the United States wants our land and resources, saying these are not idle threats. Jonathan Pedno is resigning as Green Party co-leader, effective immediately. His announcement comes after the party secured only one seat in the federal election, with his fellow co-leader Elizabeth May winning her riding in BC. Pedno ran in a Liberal stronghold in Montreal and finished in fifth place. The Greens fell to only 1.3% national support and chose not to run candidates in more than 100 ridings in order to prevent Conservative wins. An organization representing Quebec Inuit says some people in Nunavik were effectively denied their right to vote in this week's federal election. Makivik says polling hours were inconsistent across the northern part of the province, and some communities were unable to vote altogether. It wants Elections Canada to investigate and ensure that every Inuk in Nunavik is able to vote in future elections. Alberta is looking at a number of changes to its election rules. Bill 54, if passed, will ban electronic tabulators, require unofficial vote counts to be completed within 12 hours of polls closing, and eliminate the practice of vouching for somebody at a polling station. Justice Minister Mickey Amery says the changes are to strengthen public trust in the integrity of Alberta's elections. But the bill also changes the rules around referendums, raising speculation around Alberta holding a referendum on separation. Instead of citizens having to collect 600,000 signatures in 90 days, they would need to collect about 300,000 signatures in 120 days. The Alberta government will be pumping more money into programs that will help build Alberta's workforce. The government is investing $185 million to expand employment support for Albertans and help employers find, hire, and train workers. Seniors, Community and Social Services Minister Jason Nixon says some of the funds will go to the on-the-job training in collaboration with employers, including more than $20 million in simulated work sites.
Get paid, get hands-on experience and training from local employers from various industries. This setup helps learners practice tasks safely and prepares them for stable employment. I've heard, sir, one example of how we can provide more than just direct supports. We also help Albertans by removing financial barriers, offering mental health supports, and providing essential work gear. Albertans are known to be hardworking, and I would say that is especially true for those who face barriers to employment. Many of these people have proven what it means to push through even when things are hard, to keep learning and to keep seeking great opportunities. These are qualities that every workplace needs, and I can't wait to see these budget dollars in action, helping more Albertans find and maintain meaningful employment and building the workforce that we need to support and grow Alberta's economy. Thank you very much.
Currently, there are 5 simulated work sites across the province in Calgary, Red Deer, Grand Prairie, Millet, and Fort Saskatchewan. Nixon says this funding will create even more locations. The Canadian Union of Postal Workers says it has returned to the bargaining table with Canada Post amid uncertainty about a potential labor disruption later this spring. The mayor of Vancouver says residents are sick and tired of inquiries and into the recurring pattern of people in a mental health crisis that become a public safety crisis. Ken Sims says the man accused of killing 11 people by driving a vehicle through a street lined with festival goers was under the care of a mental health team and on extended leave from involuntary treatment. Sims says this points to the deeper failure in the mental health care system in British Columbia. Premier David Eby has said he will call a public inquiry if the criminal trial doesn't have answers into the attack. Noel Johansson's wife, Jennifer Darbolet, was one of the 11 people killed in the car attack in Vancouver last Saturday. He says he's still coming to grips with the loss.
She was extraordinary, and I think maybe what made her extraordinary was that she affected more people than she had any idea that she could. She created not just art and paintings, but she created community. It happened quicker than I've ever felt anything happen, and with more force. I felt like I was completely out of control, and in that millisecond, the only thing I could do was put my head forward, because I knew I was falling backwards, and I knew my head would smash on the pavement. And I think somehow that saved my life. I have an incredible sadness when I'm alone. I can tell you that, and probably will for the rest of my life. There'll be a hole there for sure. I just want people to know and see the examples that have been set by people like Jen. And, just see connection in the world around you. Don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to be yourself. Be big, be bold.
Meanwhile, mental health experts say communal grief following the Vancouver tragedy will likely persist for months. University of British Columbia sociology professor Seth Aberton says events like Saturday's attack can trigger collective trauma, the sudden destruction of social infrastructure. Aberton says research shows the impacts can spread beyond the injured or witnesses to the larger cultural community. Saskatchewan's police watchdog is investigating a man's death after he was arrested on a First Nation. The Serious Incident Response Team says it happened this week on the James Smith Cree Nation after Mounties were called about a man using bear spray in a home. The agency says officers arrested the man under the Mental Health Services Act, and he died after being handcuffed. It says officers did not use a stun gun and had attempted life-saving measures on the man before he died. Saskatchewan Police, Catholic cardinals have set May 7th as the start date for the conclave to elect the successor to Pope Francis, delaying the secret voting for 2 days so they can get to know one another better and find consensus on a candidate before they are sequestered in the Sistine Chapel. Tricia Thomas from the Associated Press has the story.
We are just under a week from the next conclave to elect the next pope. Cardinals have been gathering from all over the world. Already 2 have dropped out, so now we know we should have 133 cardinal electors. That's 133 so-called princes of the church, who are cardinals under 80, who will go into the Sistine Chapel and choose who will be the next pontiff. Now, they've been meeting every day in what they call cardinal congregations, and they're already coming up with a few problems because 133 is more than they've ever had before, and they come from 71 different countries and they don't know each other. So they've had to wear name tags so that they can learn each other's name for starters. On top of that, they speak a lot of different languages. Italian is the official language at the Vatican, and they've been using interpreters to help out during these congregations. But Vatican officials said today there will be no interpreters allowed inside the Sistine Chapel. Now, once the cardinals do go inside the Sistine Chapel, they're all going to have enough places to sit. So they're putting in new rows of tables for the cardinals to sit at. The Vatican officials said as early as this weekend, they will be attaching the chimney to the roof of the Sistine Chapel that's behind me. And from there, we will see the smoke that comes out after each session of balloting. There's a morning session and an afternoon session. Now, if the smoke is white, that means they've elected the next pope. If the smoke is black, they have to go back to another round of balloting, and there is still no pope.
Statistics Canada says the economy shrunk 0.2% in February, but economists say bad weather was likely the larger culprit than uncertainty related to the trade war with the United States. CIBC economist Andrew Grantham says poor winter conditions hurt sectors such as mining, oil and gas, transportation, and real estate. After a brush with death, actor Dave Thomas from the old comedy show SCTV says he is going to war-torn Ukraine. Back in 2020, Thomas had sepsis in his arms and legs and was in hospice. But after being treated with antibiotics, he pulled through. Now, Thomas says he's heading overseas to make a video for the Kyiv-based Ukrainian Freedom Fund, co-founded by his friend, a retired colonel for the U.S. Marine Corps Reserve.
Okay, I didn't kick the bucket back in 2020. What else am I going to do? What am I going to do that I think is important? And so that's where I am. That's why I'm doing this. I'm not a humanitarian. I don't have any of these skill sets, but I'm going to try. You know, it's the sort of thing where I had a buddy that called me and asked me for help, and he started this Ukrainian Freedom Fund, and I looked at this situation in the Ukraine and I thought, well, this is terrible, and I should try to help. Now got Canadian consultants, got a Canadian general on their board, and they put together evac teams to get, you know, old people and children out of frontline areas where they're in danger. They have experts that help defuse unexploded ordnance in the rubble of buildings. They're training locals with, you know, how to deal with field injuries, with field medical kits. They're supplying food and clothing and shelter. So there's a lot of stuff that they're doing. But for me, I'm supposed to go to this place called Dnipro. It's D-N-I-P-R-O. It's right on the front line, and I'm going to go to a comedy club there because I want to find out if the Ukrainians can still laugh. And I found just the sort of feedback I got just from over here is, yes, we do laugh. In fact, we laugh more than ever, and that's really important to us. It's a release. And so I want to find out why they're laughing, what they're laughing at. And as somebody who's a comedian, I mean, I'm tremendously disadvantaged because I don't speak the language, but I'm going to get in there and try to figure that out.
Thomas says he hopes to drive donations and do something meaningful with the rest of his life. Deloitte says the uncertainty from trade policies and companies' efforts to get orders in before U.S. tariffs hit mean a sharp drop in investment and rising unemployment. The firm sees unemployment peaking at 7.5% in the third quarter before starting to trend back under 7% next year. Along with the uncertainty over U.S. tariff policies is how Canada's re-elected Mark Carney-led Liberal government will respond. Although Deloitte says supports are expected to focus on infrastructure spending to prepare for shifting trade patterns. A Toronto investment management firm has made a play for Hudson's Bay. Urbana says it made an offer for the historical company's intellectual property because its aim is to make money and stand up for Canada. The bid does not include an offer for the 80 liquidating Bay stores or the 16 licensed under the Saks banners because the firm doesn't have retail expertise. But Urbana has its eye on the 1670 charter that established Hudson's Bay and will bid on it during a separate secret auction. Visa wants to give artificial intelligence your credit card so it can do your shopping for you. The idea would see you set a budget and some preferences, and AI agents could find and buy you a sweater, weekly groceries, or an airplane ticket. Visa is partnering with a group of leading AI chatbot developers to connect their AI systems to Visa's payments network. Pilot projects begin today, with more widespread usage expected next year. Now, here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was down 32 points on the day to finish at 24,841. The Dow was up 141 to 40,669. The S&P 500 was up 8 points to 5,569, and the Nasdaq was down 14 to 17,446. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down 220 to 58.22 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 3 cents to 3.35 US. Gold was down 28.99 to 32.8788 US an ounce. Silver was down 32 cents to 32.60 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $8.90 per bushel. Barley is at $6.99. Canola is at $15.46.
That is your Forum Daily West Report. I'm Paul Arthur. Thanks so much for watching.